It's a historic day. Hamas has handed over first batch of hostages to Israel. 7 hostages is what we are learning have been handed over to the Red Cross, and we are continuing our marathon coverage on the same, getting you live visuals and all that's been happening in Israel as well as Gaza. Let me quickly go across to Arjun Hardas, India representative, American Jewish Committee. He joins me live from New Delhi. Arjun, watching this play out globally, what are you really hearing from the international Jewish community? Is this a sign of relief or perhaps a cautious pause?
Well, it's actually a mix of both. It's because unfortunately the Israelis who are living there and have dealt with this on a day-to-day basis and are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis know what the ground reality is. It looks very nice. Now, this has been repeated many times, but I will say it again. Within literally 48 hours of the October 7 attack, the narrative had shifted to, instead of looking at what has happened and those 1,200 people who were killed on October 7th, the narrative literally shifted to pro-Hamas attitudes around the world automatically. Can you imagine? A terrorist organization has just carried out massacre of 1,200 people, the largest one-day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust in 1945, since the end of the Holocaust in 1945, and automatically the sympathy shifted to them as soon as Israel started carrying out retaliatory actions against the Hamas. So there's a bit of a cynical attitude in Israel that let's see, get these people back, get the hostages back, get the bodies back, so that there is a closure of a kind since October 7th, and then we'll see what has to be done next. There is of course happiness for the families, yes, for those hostages who are alive, 20 hostages. And may I just also remind our viewers that not among the living hostages out of the 20 is Bipin Joshi, a Nepali Hindu who was also kidnapped by the Hamas on October 7th. Now, what did his role have to be in this whole thing? Where was he involved in all this? He was there as a caretaker, looking after old people. And he was kidnapped, and he's not been released. So, as the 20 numbers, the numbers and the names that match of the people who are still alive, he's not among that. So, unfortunately, we'll have to, unless something else changes. And globally, Jewish people, you see how it is. Some Jew, if you're not talking about an Israeli, but a Jewish individual sitting in, let's say, Europe or sitting in America, who's got nothing to do with Israel, besides Israel being the homeland of the Jews, is being attacked because of what is happening in Gaza. That the IDF is doing whatever it is doing, attack a Jew. Is this not pure anti-Semitism? It's much beyond that. It's vicious. But it's seen like it's an excuse. So they are happy that hopefully, okay, now that this excuse has stopped of attacking every possible Jew worldwide, and because of what is happening in Gaza, hopefully that will end. But nobody is holding their breath in Israel, nor among the Jewish community. The hatred is so huge, and you and I have both seen what has been happening around the world. The marching of this is not pro-Palestinian. That's just a disguise. This is pro-Hamas. There is an understanding around the world. There's a belief around the world, rather, that after the Holocaust 80 years ago, that there would be people have realized how terrible things can be, and there is globally there'll be a reduction in anti-Semitism. Not really. The anti-Semitic attitudes at least in the Western world have remained exactly the same. They dipped a little bit after the Holocaust because of some guilt factor, etc. What happened to the Jews, but it's back to normal. Unfortunately, I hate to use that word, but yes, that's how it is. So people are cynical. People are waiting to see what's next. If things are back to normal, so to say, as have happened after every single ceasefire with the Hamas over the last 20 years, since 2007, when the Hamas took over and started firing rockets right from the next day onwards towards Israel. Let's see.
All right, Arjun, continue to stay with us. Let me also welcome Itai Melchior, non-resident senior fellow N7 Initiative, the Atlantic Council. Welcome back, Itai. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. You join us live from Haifa, Israel. Let me ask you this. Let's start with you in Haifa. It's a day of intense emotion across Israel. How is this moment really being viewed by people there? Relief, closure, or cautious optimism?
Well, first, happy to be here again. And the answer to your question is all of the above. All of those. It's very emotional day, mixed feelings. People are either glued to the TV screens or out in the streets along the routes where the hostages are supposed to travel, around the hospitals, around the homes, around the hostage square. And people are excited about getting the hostages back, something that many believed will not happen. But together with that is also the sadness. We don't know exactly what is going to happen with the hostages that Hamas says it does not know where are buried, the deceased ones, the murdered ones. So we don't know what's going to happen with that. And if we're going to see all of them back, and that is a big concern. The second concern for some is the price. Some very, very vicious terrorists that should not see the light of day have been released under this agreement. And also history shows that many of them do get back to terrorism, and as they do that, it's a danger for people. So that's the question. And then the final question and worry is, besides the price that is paid and the families of victims and fallen soldiers and injured people, is the question what will happen now, because in the end Hamas is still in Gaza, still with the weapons. Part of the deal is that he has to relinquish weapons, he has to relinquish power, but we see the opposite happening. The last more or less 24 hours, Hamas has taken control of streets, murdered local civilians, started fighting with local militias, and the situation in Gaza is not that optimistic today. So we hope that the next phase and that the world keeps the pressure on Hamas to carry on with the deal all the way, so foreign powers can enter according to the Trump program. So as you asked in the beginning, mixed feelings, happiness, relief, but some concern and some worry and some sadness, all of them mixed together. But that is the story of Israel.
All right, I continue to stay with us. Let me quickly come back to you, Arjun. President Trump's 20-point Gaza plan has been credited with holding the ceasefire together. Do you see this as a sustainable peace framework or just smart crisis management?
As of now, management. End the war, get the hostages back, alive or the bodies, and let's see where it goes. Nobody who knows this region, especially the Israelis, have got any great hope for this is going to go in for lasting peace, etc. And as been mentioned earlier by your other guests, that a two-state solution is pretty much zero, pretty much gone to, at least in the foreseeable future, next 50 years, at least. There is some arrangement may have to be made. Maybe the American pressure might work, and please remember, Trump is going to be here officially till 2028, till 2029 January. After that, what happens is that pressure going to be still maintained again with the Israeli government to force them to have some kind of a agreement with the Palestinians. You don't need the Americans for that. The Israelis know what they're doing. They know how to do this. They've been doing it for years. Remember the agreement with the Egyptians more than 40 years ago. So they know what to do. Question here is, what are they getting out of it? If it's going to be a temporary ceasefire, so to say, between the enemies of Israel and the Hamas and others, then it's okay. Ceasefire is always better than war, better than fighting. No fighting. But if it's going to be just a hold on till the next stage, whenever they can rearm themselves, it's not going to help either side. At least the Israelis are not going to wait. Look, they've had a massive shock. They did not expect this. Many people in the kibbutz that were attacked in what is called the Gaza envelope, that were attacked, the kibbutz and villages and towns that were attacked. But there were people there, elderly people, who used to operate bus services. They used to operate car services for the Gazans. They would take them, they would go to Gaza, pick them up, bring them to Israeli hospitals. So and when they were healed, free of cost, by the way, they were taken back to Gaza after. Yahya Sinwar, if I may remind everybody, had brain cancer. And when he was a prisoner in Israel, he had brain cancer. He was healed and then released as part of the deal with Gilad Shalit's release, the young soldier who was kidnapped by the Hamas. And he was put back. And you see what happened after that. So there is not much of a chance of a long-lasting peace, especially with the Hamas. It's the so-called moderate powers that are there, the Palestinian Authority, and has been mentioned earlier, the concept of pay for slay is that the Palestinian Authority would actually give money to the families of people of the Palestinian citizens of the West Bank who would carry out terror attacks, suicide attacks, terror attacks, and the money amount would depend on how intense or how badly they would kill Israelis. So, and then you have the other concept, which is that of reform required, not just for the pay for slay is supposed to be scrapped by the Palestinian Authority, but also the concept of changing their books, their education system, which dehumanizes Jews like nothing that we've seen before. So all this is required. Then we begin to start talking about some kind of normality. And remember, again, people have forgotten 20 years ago, Gaza was technically an independent area. There was not a single Jew there, not a single Israeli there. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon withdrew from every square inch of Gaza. Not a single Israeli was left behind, not even the dead, by the way. The coffins were dug up and brought back to Israel and reburied here, reburied in Israel. Now the question is, if after all that, there has been not even an iota of peace or any intention that, okay, we don't like you, you don't like us, we will not join the Abraham Accords maybe, but you live your life, we live our life. No, it's gone exactly the opposite way. From the first day the Hamas took over in 2007, there's been a plan on to attack Israel. What has been mentioned by Yeshaya, for example, is the long-lasting peace works when you begin to accept that the other person is human. When the other side you can talk to, he's human, there is a family concept, etc. There isn't. Unfortunately, Israel is, even if the other side denies it, it's seen as an illegal occupation of Arab land, of Muslim land. And there is going to be nobody can officially, no Muslim representative can officially say, yes, we recognize Israel, it should be here to stay permanently. They'll say it if they have to, make a lip service kind of a thing. But actual acceptance of Israel is not going to happen for a long, long time to go until the mentality changes. And I don't see that happening.
All right, Arjun, I get your point. Let me quickly go across to Itai. Itai, you heard Arjun, he says there's not much chance for lasting peace, at least right now. From your perspective, what is the realistic solution for bringing stability and peace to the region?
That is the $1,000 question, because we've been around this and different solutions have been pursued, and maybe the Gaza experiment, as Arjun said, was an experiment where the Palestinians got a whole area to themselves without any foreigners, no Israeli soldiers, no occupation, a open border with a neighboring Muslim country, and they have a border with Egypt, even though Israel was blamed all the time for some kind of concentration camp or enclosement, but they had an open border with a Muslim country. And still this area, which was supposed to turn into a Singapore, turned into a huge terrorist camp. And all the money that went there for investment, for aid, was all funneled to tunnels and to prepare for war and to build rockets, which will be fired into Israel. So the optimism, and many people in Israel who were optimistic and were looking for a two-state solution understood that if this is what happened far away, it's not that far, Israel is very small, 20,000 square kilometers, but if this is what happened in the Gaza envelope, if we try the same experiment in what is called the West Bank, and it's actually Judea and Samaria, if we did this there, a few kilometers away from Israel's central population areas, then it could be devastating. So many people have now given up hope on the two-state solution, and therefore this is not a viable solution. Now, there have been many solutions tabled, some autonomous regions, recently one of the leaders in the Hebron area offered to create a kind of an emirate system similar to the UAE system with small emirates and small areas, and even offered that their Hebron emirate will join the Abraham Accords. In the end, you have to remember that Israel and the Judean Samaria are entwined. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from Judea and Samaria travel into Israel every day to work. They work, some of them work in simple work, but some of them are doctors and other professions and work in Israeli hospitals. So the economies are entwined. And of course, the main concern is how to keep each side with its own tradition. Israel is the only Jewish state as opposed to more than 20 Muslim states, and Israel wants to stay a Jewish state. And many of the people who want separation have been looking at solutions how to separate the populations for their own self-rule, but without creating a new country with a new entity, with a new army between the Mediterranean Sea and the river. Those who chant from the river to the sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, don't know that at some places it's 20, 30 kilometers wide. So there's not room for another army that will endanger Israel. So that's not a solution. And therefore, the solution will have to be somewhere in between. Remember that just until last week, before the Trump plan was tabled, there was a lot of talk about annexation, with some in Israel saying we want to annex parts of Judea and Samaria, mainly ones where most of the population is Jewish, and some of it which has a strategic security situation. Because remember, Gaza is on the sea at zero sea level.
Right,
But Judea and Samaria.
Right, I am really sorry to interrupt. I'm short on time. You know, we understand it's a historic day, a moment of relief and reflection, but also a reminder of the long road ahead. Thank you very much, Itay Melchior, Arjun Hardas, for joining me on this News 9 special.